Hey everyone, it is Monday, January 29th, and this is my lecture video for that day, as well as the note sheet that we'll be completing in class. If you're an online student, head over to Moodle now and download this same note sheet, and then follow along as I fill this out. This is kind of our last lecture within the fantasy and sci-fi genre before I just turn you guys loose on your first trial write assignment. The trial write assignments kind of function as like the test for each genre. They're super open-ended. They're simply stories that you guys invent on your own, and you attempt to, I guess, follow the skills that we've been practicing and the conventions of the genre. So more information for that is actually on Moodle right here. Overview of trial writes. That's a document that just goes over what a trial write assignment is, and then this is the actual assignment. This is going to be due Sunday next week, so 6 days from now, by 11:59 p.m. So you have the weekend to work on it. We are going to pretty much think of Wednesday and Friday's classes as just work days for this. If you're an online student, this will be the only lecture that you get this week, and then you will work on this as well. I don't think it's a painful assignment. It's just 1,000 words, so about 4 pages double spaced of a story that you invent, and then you have to follow the conventions and the skills that I'm requiring. But yeah, so back to the lecture though. We talked about spare character writing on Friday of last week's lectures, and one thing that I thought would be really important to follow that up with is the types of characters in writing. You've probably heard of these before as well, so this probably isn't new information. But I realized after walking you through the spare character write paragraph model that it's useful to know when to use spare and when not to use spare. And the type of characters that you create will determine what level of detail that you go into and if you use a spare paragraph or not. So we're going to go through each of these and each of these terms. A quick question is, what are the 4 combos that you can have from this? And then we'll talk about some examples as well. And then I'll tell you where spare fits into all of this as we go. Okay, so every single character that's ever been written is a combination of either flat or round and static or dynamic. Okay, so flat and round are kind of like our first trait, right? They could be flat or round. And then the second trait is they can be static or dynamic. Okay, so these will combo the top and the bottom. So it'll make more sense as we go through it. A flat character is a side character, typically a side character, not a main character, that we know exactly, or not exactly, but we know very little about. Okay? Why do flat characters exist? They fulfill a role in the story. Okay? Sometimes they're known as functional characters. Wow, typing is not my strong suit. Neither is hair, apparently. This is insane. Functional characters, okay? So a flat character is going to do exactly one thing in the story. We don't need to know their personalities. Oops. Don't need to know personality traits. We don't need to know backstory. All we need to know is exactly one reason for that character's existence. Okay? Typically, flat characters do one thing to move the story along. Okay? A lot of times in fantasy and sci-fi, the role that those characters fill is dying. And I know that kind of sounds really morbid or weird, but you're not going to kill off your main character. So if you need to create tension, if you need to make your evil villain evil, and they are trying to take over the world, they kill someone. But it's not someone you're going to invest a lot of time or effort into developing. It is a flat character. Okay? So a flat character is just a character that fulfills a role. You're not going to have entire chapters about them. They typically get brought up and then left behind. Okay? They do one thing and we move on from them. This is as opposed to a round character. A round character, I'm sure this is very natural. They're either flat or round. A round character is a character with a full personality. Okay? This is a character that is being developed. Okay? In other words, wow, I can't type. With a full personality and deliberate development from the writer. Typing, you guys, from the writer. In other words, these characters are central to the story typically. And in order to make them more relational, relevant, I'll just say relevant. To make them more relevant, the writer adds details that make them seem more real. They aren't invented for just a function. They're invented to be a part of the story. Part of the story, not just a plot device. Okay. In other words, are sparse characters. And I'm going to write that right here. Right? Spare, creating a spare paragraph equals a round character. What you guys did last week when you created your spare character is you created a round character. This doesn't mean that round characters have like pages and pages and pages devoted to their development. We just start to get to know them and the stories about them, and we continue to get to know them. A paragraph or two to introduce them, and then we continually go along the story with them. Okay? I'm avoiding the term main character because I actually think there's some flat characters out there that are main characters. And you can decide if this is well done or not. But for example, I think Frodo in Lord of the Rings is a very flat character. He does exactly one thing. Nobody really likes Frodo. Maybe I'm making a hot take here, but he does exactly one thing, and that's he's the ring bearer. Okay? We can think of some other main characters that are very flat. They do exactly one thing. But in general, main characters are round. Not always, though. But the minute you start going into the depth of that character and the inner thoughts, and they're multifaceted and they have inner thinking, maybe Frodo is round. I don't know. Maybe I'm cutting Frodo short, but he felt very flat. But he probably was round. Because the minute you have inner thoughts and you have lots of backstory and lots of interesting things that make the character feel real, like a real person, they become round. Okay, so flat is poorly developed, round is well developed. It's that simple. Okay, now we're gonna then, in addition to having a character be flat or round, the character will also either be static or dynamic. And the terms static and dynamic are related to fundamental internal changes of the character. A static character is a character who does not change. And when I say does not change, I'm not talking about physical change. Okay? Not referring to physical change or new information or learning new information. Okay? Here, a dynamic character is changing on a very deep level. Okay? So A character who does not change at all is static. We're referring, oh, this isn't bold. We're referring specifically to a character's beliefs, attitudes, side, like if it's a war story and there's two sides, side of a fight, light side, dark side, that kind of thing, side of fight, etc. Okay, not small changes. Okay. So a static character does not change. Static characters stay the same throughout the story. Dynamic characters, and I'm going to move quickly through this one because I feel like you kind of have to talk about them together. Dynamic characters are characters that experience a significant event in the story that changes them fundamentally. Again, we're not talking about learning new information about the character. We're not talking about a physical change in the character. I remember teaching middle school. I'd have my students do static versus dynamic characters. And sometimes the dynamic event that they would come up with would be like the character getting turned into like a new species or something, like like superhero story. Like the character gets struck by lightning and becomes Lightning Man. That is not dynamic character. I know that seems like it should be dynamic character, but I'm not even referring to physical abilities at all. I'm referring to mindset and beliefs and attitudes, right? Changes them fundamentally on a moral level. Anything less than that's not dynamic. It's referring to, it needs to be a light side or a dark side to light side switch, or good to evil, or evil to good. We're talking about the fundamental morality of the character switches when it becomes to dynamic characters. This is obviously specific to fantasy and sci-fi. In other genres, the enemies to lovers trope that we talked about already a little bit and banned, that's a dynamic character. A character who hates someone to love someone, or a bully who becomes a friend. That would be dynamic character, right? Let me add those. So in other genres, it's enemies to lovers, bullies to friends, etc. It's all related to mindset, morality, etc. Big picture, okay? Not just physical change or new info. Yeah, learning something new about a character does not make them dynamic, right? You can't give a reader all the information at once, right? That's impossible. But if learning something new about a character does not mean the character changed, it meant the reader learned something. Okay, that's a pacing thing, not a character development thing. So we have these 4 categories. I guess they're 2 categories, but 4 total terms, and we can combo them. So we're going to have 4 combinations of characters. Oops, no one bolded. We'll have a flat and static character. This is typically a total side character. They never change and there's not much to them. Typically, these characters do one thing for a short time in the story. Okay? This is a this is like the writer put this character in and then they died. That kind of thing. The writer put this character in and they welcomed them into the hotel and then showed them their rooms and then we move on, right? These are total side characters. Then we would have, and this might not seem possible, but is possible, we have flat and dynamic characters. This one is funny because it means we have a character who does exactly one thing and is typified by one thing in the story, and that thing changes. Okay? These characters, somewhat side characters. They do one thing exactly. They still are just doing one thing, but receive a bit of development so that they actually do morally change. I can think of so many examples of this, and I'm just like, I'm not exactly sure which examples to give, but these would be side characters with a dream. These would be the side characters with something that causes them to change. They aren't the main character. They're not super well developed, but they have a function, and that function changes throughout the story. Um, I could try to come up with some examples. I think some of the best examples that I actually know of might actually be in anime. I don't watch a ton of anime, but so many students have been commenting to me that like the character design in anime is super strong. So that I've watched a few episodes and whatnot, and there's some really, really great flat and dynamic characters in these stories. The characters literally do one thing, but they'll switch sides. I mean, it's kind of funny. So, yeah, flat and dynamic characters. It is a possible combo. Moving on. Now we're to our round characters. We can have a round character who never changes. Round and static. Okay, this is a very well-developed character that does not change. Okay, this could be, I'm not going to say main character or side character, right? This is a well-developed character who does not change. Many times, often our protagonists of stories are round and static. Think of every Marvel movie ever. Marvel doesn't really have the dynamic protagonist, in my opinion. They do not have protagonists that change sides. Captain America starts perfect, pure of heart, stands for justice, and he dies pure of heart, stands for justice. There's a lot to him. He's a very thorough character that entire stories are based around. He is round, but he never really switches sides. Okay. And comic fans, you can probably tell me I'm wrong, and I will concede. I have not read comics. I just watched movies. So my apologies if I'm way off. Frodo. Earlier I said he was flat. I've rethought that. He's probably round. He's not a great round character. He does one thing, but we have his inner thoughts. We have his relationships. We know a lot about his character. So he's got to be round. But he never changes. That's the whole point of the story, right? The whole point of the story is that the ring is trying to change him, trying to corrupt him, trying to make him a dynamic character that's good to evil, but it doesn't, right? Frodo at the very end is so close to being corrupted, but he's not. The ring ends up in the fire, and it's all good. Sam is a round and static character. I mean, we could just go on and on and on. This is one of the most popular storytelling, I guess, combinations for your characters. Your characters will probably be round and static. If you do a spare character development, they're not going to change through the course of your story, most likely. Okay, so that's probably where you're going to be at. And then the final combo, of course, would be round and dynamic. And these are some of the most well-loved characters. Super well-developed characters that have a pivotal moment in the story. Not a critical moment, a pivotal moment, right? I mean, these are often the characters that we love the most. They're bad guys that became good guys. They can be good guys that become bad guys, but they're characters that make a shift because of the events of the story at the perfect time and become the heroes that we always knew they could be. And these are characters that are near and dear to people's hearts. Yeah, again, I could give examples of this, but I just kind of feel like I falter. I recommend you Google it if you want some examples. The examples that I would give are unique to my personal experiences and stories and that I've consumed and whatnot. But probably as I've talked with students more and more, one of the most famous examples of a round and dynamic character would be Darth Vader. Anakin, he starts off good. He's a hero, and then he's slowly consumed by evil, slowly corrupted, and he becomes evil for this large section of story until the very end he switches back to good. Like, that is so dynamic. Okay, so a lot of times we actually see these dynamic and round characters as kind of pseudo villains, right? They're not total villains. They're not the villain that we kill at the end. They're kind of anti-heroes and pseudo villains, villains to heroes, like really, really amazing characters. So Darth Vader, of course. I think you could make the argument that, like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of some stories that I really think most people have watched. Deadpool, you could probably say, is round and dynamic. Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender is definitely round and dynamic. Yeah, there's a lot of really great characters out there that are round and dynamic. Most protagonists, though, are going to be your round and static characters. Okay. All right. Examples. Wow. I've just been faltering like crazy through examples. I am not a connoisseur of sci-fi fantasy, but your flat and static characters, that they show up and they die. I don't think I can really come up with examples off the top of my head, but the round and static, round plus static, and then the round plus dynamic, I want to give you some examples of. Okay, so round and static, I would definitely say like your common protagonists: Frodo, Sam, Captain America. It's very male. I realize I'm doing a poor job of putting my ladies in my lecture right now, and I'm really sorry. This is just not my strong suit. I'm not really a fantasy sci-fi writer. So Frodo, Sam, Captain America, Naruto, Captain American. Oh, brother. Spider-Man, even? Yeah, he changes. He changes because of Uncle Ben's death, but he never significantly changes sides or changes morality. Again, beautiful characters can be round and static. Spider-Man. And people will argue with me about this list, and I'm fine with that. You can argue all you want. I truly just want you to understand it, though. Round and dynamic. Let me go a few here. This is where we get our Darth Vaders. This is where we get our Zuko's. This is where we get, with some other really popular media stories, our Severus Snape, which you might argue that Severus Snape was static because he was always a certain way. He just portrayed himself as evil, but he was always good. Right? You can make some arguments amongst these, but Snape, again, very, very good character that we thought was bad, but was always good. And it's just like this emotionally riveting part of the story where you see his backstory come to light. He becomes round at the same time as he becomes dynamic. I mean, it's just really, really beautiful. One of the best characters of all time, for sure. I guess examples aren't my strong suit. So get onto Google. Google this. Examples of round dynamic characters. Examples of round static characters. I didn't invent this language. This language is used by writers across the world. So you can Google it and it'll come up with some results. Sorry, my examples are so weak, guys. All right, in your stories, let's turn it that way. I want you to begin with a round character. That's why I taught you the spare character writing paragraph model, is because that's what leads to having a round character, is giving me, a situation that they're in, a physical appearance, an action, an inner thought, and relationships. Boom. You give me all that, they're round already. And then you only round them out more and more and more. I would try to get you to make a dynamic character in your story, but really, to be honest, to do a dynamic character right takes lots and lots of time. We have like entire stories are simply about the shift from good to evil or evil to good. Entire stories are about that dynamic experience. Short stories really rarely will have dynamic characters. Maybe sometimes they do, but really rarely they will. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to make you write dynamic characters. I just want you to understand this, and then in your story, definitely aim to have round characters that will be dynamic if you were to complete the story, but a round character, and then some flat characters too that just function, serve a role. Okay, that's all I got for you guys. I hope this helps. See you.